Welcome back. Let's talk about the migrant crisis. This is why we've got to do something about our ludicrous situation right now. This is why, in my view, we've got to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, so we can't be told by the European Court of Human Rights what to do in our own country. Guy, a Congolese migrant who'd been living in Glasgow, was jailed some years ago for 3 years for sexually assaulting his own stepdaughter, a Congolese paedophile. He's come out of jail. We've tried to deport him, quite rightly. He's appealed to the European Court of Human Rights, and they have ruled that he is allowed to stay because he has a right to a family life, part of his family he sexually abused. It's good, isn't it? Now, we had a case about 2 weeks. About once a week, we get one of these paedophiles is allowed to stay by the European Court of Human Rights because they've got a right to a family life. I say you have no right to a family life. You won't be allowed to have a family life anyway because you're a paedophile. And you want a right to a family life? Go and have a family life back in Congo. How about that? This is outrageous, isn't it?
It is, and even more outrageous is the fact that I read today that the sentence that this person served and has now been released from was only 3 years. Yeah. So they served 3 years for sexually abusing their underage stepdaughter.
Well, at least they went to jail. It's quite rare for paedophiles in this country.
But
ask Hugh Edwards.
Yeah, clearly not for long enough. And this is typical. And the other thing that, of course, when we talk about the ECHR and our restrictions, our being kind of hemmed in by it in terms of us not being able to do the right thing for ourselves, this court, this convention, also stops us deporting people, including asylum seekers, because, of course, some of them convert to being Christians and say they can't go back to their original country.
Being gay is the new big
Being
one.
gay is the thing. Getting a tattoo of a crucifix on their arm. I can't go back to Afghanistan, for instance, or wherever I come from because I'll be persecuted for being Christian. Everyone is playing the system. It is costing us a fortune,
the useless
socially,
system.
Financially, and the only way out of this, and do you know what I'm absolutely flabbergasted by, is that we've just had a Conservative leadership election after one of their biggest defeats in decades, and you had two candidates on the so-called centre-right, one saying we should leave the ECHR and one saying we shouldn't. Who did the Conservative membership vote for? The one that didn't say we should leave the ECHR. No wonder Reform are filling the vacuum.
Yeah, let me tell you, I think Kemi Badenoch, I wish her well, but I don't think she is the right person to lead the Tories. We need dramatic moves here, and she's very much an establishment figure. She works from within the system. She talks about people being not serious. People who are not serious, she thinks of people like Nigel Farage are not serious because he actually takes action. He doesn't bog himself down in Westminster bureaucracy. I'm afraid Kemi Badenoch is a Westminster creature through and through, and I don't think that bodes well, and she should leave the ECHR so we can get rid of paedophiles who rape their own stepdaughters but are allowed to stay because of the ECHR, because they've got a right to a family life. I say you haven't got a right to a family life anywhere if you do that, but you certainly have not got a right to a family life here. This, again, is something that has to stop. Well, let's stick with the migrant crisis, Russell, if we can, because Keir Starmer now, we learn, wants to copy the Italian leader Giorgia Meloni, who's done some very successful deals with, namely, Libya and Tunisia. She's given them a lot of money, a lot of euros, so that they'll turn the boats around when they leave Libya or Tunisia, destined for Italy. And they're doing it. It's working. She's reduced migrants' arrivals by 62%. Starmer says he wants to copy this. So he's going to, having given France £500 million to do the square root of sod all, basically. Haven't done a damn thing. They're supposed to patrol their beaches, but they don't really. Still they come. By the way, it's something like 470 came across on Saturday. It's special, isn't it?
Well, there's more this year already than the whole of last year.
18% up. They're coming 200 a day, every day at least. Friday and Saturday. I think Friday was something like 230, Saturday 470. Still they come, ladies and gentlemen. It just carries on and on and on. So his next failed attempt to solve the migrant crisis, having come up with his nonsense about smashing the people smuggling gangs, hasn't smashed any gangs, and even if he does, that won't work. You've got to stop the migrants. Simple as that. Stop the migrants. Then you won't have any people smuggling gangs because they won't have any business.
Well, Kevin, in fairness, he did stop one boat seller on the beaches of Bodrum selling dinghies. I mean, come on, give the man some credit.
Yeah, well, that doesn't work, does it? Anyway, now he wants to give millions and millions and millions of pounds to Vietnam, Turkey and Kurdistan, which is part of Iraq. He wants to give them millions of pounds, millions of British taxpayers' money to persuade them to do more about stopping their citizens leaving Vietnam or Turkey or Kurdistan and coming to Britain. Well, you know, that it's not the same, is it? Telling Libya and Tunisia, you know, could you stop the boats when they leave your shores? That's you know, you can visualise that, and it's working. How does Vietnam sort of go around saying, you know, if any of you are thinking of, you know, going to the airport and flying to Britain or France or anything, can you maybe not do that? I mean, how do they do it? This is just chucking our money down the drain, isn't it?
The astonishing thing is, and we have talked about this on this show, and Jeremy's and Julia's and Mike's and Ian's so many times, rather than going kind of up the convoluted, ambiguous chain to try and stop something happening in some weird and wonderful place that is indirectly responsible for this problem, we should go directly to the root of the problem, which is to simply turn the boats back in the channel, but also to stop the incentives. We still have, and I've talked about it so many times, this website, this homepage for the Home Office is still live online right now that literally says to asylum seekers, and I'm not even exaggerating the wording, Kevin, it says, this is what you get. It is an absolute advert from Britain to any economic migrant to pretend to be an asylum seeker, to come here for money, accommodation, health, and so on. All we need to do is say, do you know what, we're not going to do that anymore. That's what Georgia Maloney's done. She said, and by the way, lots of other countries in Europe now that we used to think were quite liberal and left have now gone right politically, and guess what they've done? They've started deporting people, they've started stopping benefits, they've started stopping people at the borders. It's the only way to stop this, is to stop by way of intervention at the point of crossing rather than some remote dinghy seller in Bodrum.
The only other thing, there's one other thing you can do, which is more likely to happen, to be honest with you, because, you know, I can't see us as a nation ever turning the boats around. The Navy, for example, says too dangerous. In other words, apparently if you carry on sailing across the channel, if you get to the midpoint and you carry on towards Dover, that's not lethal. But if you turn the boats around and they go back to France, that apparently is lethal. If you believe that, I've got some swampland to sell you in Florida. Absolute nonsense. But I respect and agree with your idea. If only we could turn them round, but we have no resolve. You know what we're like. We won't do it. So we should do in Australia and just tell every migrant, when you come across the channel in one of these small boats, you inherently break our laws. You can't do that. You arrive with no passport. You arrive on an illegal vessel. Therefore, automatically, you have no chance whatsoever of being granted asylum. You come here legally, we'll have a look at your asylum case, your asylum application. You come here illegally on a boat, we will detain you, prosecute you and deport you. If we get that message out to them, the same thing will happen here as happened in Australia. The migrant crisis will be solved in about 3 months.
Yes, because these legal routes that our friends on the left keep banging on about, we have those already. They're called airports. Now, what you do, wherever you are in the world and you want to genuinely seek asylum, what you can do is jump on a thing called an aeroplane, turn up at Heathrow, show your passport to the passport officer, and as you do it, say, I wish to claim asylum. That's what people have done in this country or come into this country for decades and decades and decades. So, you know, that is still available to people. But the other thing that maybe we should do is think about, when we think about accommodation and the cost of housing these migrants, this £6 million a day, this £5 billion a year in terms of processing costs, accommodation and so on. I think, and I'm not sure we can do this legally, that the other disincentive is to say, look, if you turn up here and you have broken the law, as you rightly say, Kevin, we're going to have to put you into a holding camp. So let's call it that for now, not a prison, not an internment camp, a holding camp, and you will stay there and you will be fed and you will be warm and you'll have a blanket, you won't have an iPhone and you won't have loads and loads of money, but you'll be held there until your asylum application is processed. What's wrong with that? Why don't we simply do that? Because that in itself would be a huge deterrent.
Yeah, but I say that the processing is this. You came here illegally, boom, cross, you can't stay.
Well, then process them on the beaches and send them straight back.
Yeah.
I mean, on a Royal Navy frigate and dump them on the French coast.
Get that message across to them that once you get here, if you come here on an illegal boat, as so many of them do, by the way, I've got those numbers, Friday, 237, Saturday, a bumper 425. There's always a day of rest on a Sunday, funnily enough, so none yesterday. But they'll be coming again fairly soon. They're coming on average at the rate of about 200 plus every single day because our Prime Minister and the Home Secretary are doing nothing to stop them. In fact, as Russell quite rightly says, the only thing we've got are encouragements and enticements. We will give you, upon arrival, a 4-star hotel to live in, free food, 45 quid a week, free dentists, free doctors, free hospital treatment, and most importantly, of course, a free lawyer to fight your case to stay in this country. I mean, I'm going to finish this little section on in exactly the same way as I finished the last little section. I mean, the insanity of that is off the scale. Off the scale. Meanwhile, old Keir is over in Brazil. He's on another one of his jollies, meeting Xi Jinping, who's probably met him by now. Xi Jinping has probably forgotten he ever saw him, so that would be no big deal. We'll talk about that when we come back.